Chapter 17. The Prophecy Fulfilled. The locked door to the control room in front of Junior slid open. A worker chuck looked out into the corridor and saw nothing.
"Excuse me,"
said a little voice. The worker chuck looked down. Right there, bold as brass, standing in the middle of the corridor in front of him, was a small young boy, no taller than his waist, staring right up at him.
"Yeah?"
said the worker chuck, confused as to what or who this might be. Before the worker chuck could send out an alert to the other chucks, Junior raised up his arm. The worker chuck floated up to the ceiling, and then, as Junior quickly lowered his arm again, the worker chuck slammed back down to the floor. Junior leaned over the heap and reached forward with one arm to disable that worker chuck while reaching out with his other, fixing the other worker chuck in place and unable to move. With a flick of his arm, the second worker chuck slid across the floor towards Junior, stopping inches from him. With another flick, it spun around on the spot and then collapsed in another heap on the floor as Junior hit its hidden button. Junior strolled over to the middle of the room and hit the self-destruct button. A loud robotic voice suddenly blared out from all of the loudspeakers across Chuck City.
"Chuck City will self-destruct in T-5 minutes."
Remembering the layout of the city from the mental map he'd made, Junior dashed out of the room and down the corridor to the staircase. Dropping down several levels, he flew across the main platform of the cryogenics facility and down the ramp towards the cloning facility below. He was just about to wave his arms at the guard chucks watching the door when suddenly he was grabbed from behind and lifted into the air. The Chuckinator's job is to keep vigilant and scan the area, so he had seen what had gone on in the control room and he had seen Junior running along the platform towards him. He clamped Junior's arms behind his back and held him up in front of himself to prevent Junior from being able to use his powers. Holding him up, the Chuckinator walked into the cloning facility and called across to the one chuck.
"I have him!"
"At last,"
said the one chuck.
"The new character born during the 3rd season of Truly Bedrock has finally made his appearance."
He turned round towards Foxy, who was once again strapped to the chair in the center of the room.
"You've been holding out on me, Foxy, all this time. This little chicken,"
he said with disgust,
"has been growing in the shadows away from my gaze, but now I have him, and I can ensure the prophecy is never fulfilled."
The system blared out again.
"Chuck City will self-destruct in T-4 minutes."
"Throw him in the cells with his father,"
yelled the one chuck to the Chuckinator.
"and will someone please disable that darn self-destruct system?"
He turned to Foxy again.
"Now, Mr. No-Tail, I no longer need to put you through the agony of harvesting your cells for new clones. In fact, I don't need you at all anymore. However, you deserve this pain."
He quickly grabbed for the lever to activate the needle array, but as he reached, a worried-looking worker chuck burst through the door.
Sir,
He stammered.
the self-destruct system won't turn off."
The one chuck's grip loosened on the lever as he lowered his arm.
"What do you mean it won't turn off?"
The one chuck yelled. The worker chuck, shaking at the thought of telling the one chuck the truth, quietly quivered in his reply.
It's like something from the outside is preventing the cancellation."
"Chuck City will self-destruct in T-3 minutes."
The worker chuck was right. Just before he'd left the ship, Junior had hacked his way into the central systems of Chuck City and disabled any possible way for the chucks to counter the self-destruct command once it was activated. There was absolutely nothing the chucks could do. No matter how deeply connected they were to the chucknet, they were simply blocked from aborting the sequence. A sudden look of fear fell over the one chuck's face as he obliterated the worker chuck that had given him the bad news. He knew, without Chuck City, the infinite chucks wouldn't be able to survive. It wasn't apparent to Foxy or his friends as to why the time cannon existed. As far as they were concerned, the chucks could time hop around space and time as they pleased. Even their chucknet ships could time hop, so why would they need a time cannon as well? As it turned out, the electromagnetic radiation that surrounded Chuck City, generated by the vast number of electronic systems that made up the city's infrastructure, as well as all of the chucks that inhabited it, meant that it was impossible for the chucks to hop in or out of Chuck City directly. They didn't need to travel far outside of the city's range to be able to time hop, but it was far more convenient to do it from within the city itself, so they built a time cannon to fire them to wherever and whenever they liked. Travelling via the time cannon, however, was a much different kind of journey to travelling via a time hop. With a time hop, you simply dematerialize in one time and space and rematerialize in another, instantly. Whereas with a time cannon, you're literally fired towards your location so quickly that time bends around you. The faster or slower you travel will depend on when you arrive at your destination. It's as simple as speed equals distance over time, almost. Sure, there are a few thousand other extremely complex and almost impossible formulae to calculate for journeys requiring the reversal of time, but in essence, that's what it's based on. The main problem with the time cannon is that it needs a direct line of sight to your destination. If there's anything that happens to be in the way as you're hurtling through time and space on a direct course to your destination, you will crash into it and most likely die instantaneously on impact. So the time cannon has to do a lot of calculations to ensure it gets you safely to your destination with as little splattering on space debris as possible. Finally, to prevent its users splatting on impact as they reach their destination, the system cleverly takes into account the deceleration caused by the entry of the traveller through whichever planet's atmosphere they're arriving on, which allows the user to arrive slightly less vigorously than they would otherwise in order to maintain being alive. Needless to say, it's a complicated system that requires a lot of time to calculate the infinitely precise angle and speed of projection for its users to arrive safely at their destination. Interestingly, and quite conveniently, the time cannon was currently programmed to fire any potential travellers to the exact moment and place where Trudy Bedrock Season 4 was due to begin. What makes this even more interesting is that the Chucks were unable to see anything beyond the end of Season 3 due to the escalation of current events, which meant that none of them could possibly have been able to program the time cannon to that particular time and place. Someone else must have been there, someone else that no one would even notice, someone that could walk among the Chucks as if he was one of them, someone that spoke their language and understood their ways, someone also called Chuck. The doors to the prison cells that held Big Chicken and Geraldine suddenly swung open as the alarms started to ring and the announcements blared, signaling the imminent destruction of Chuck City. Big Chicken burst out and ran to Geraldine's cell. Grabbing her by the hand, they ran towards the cloning facility where Foxy was strapped to the chair. As they flew past an observation window, Big Chicken caught a glimpse of the Chuckinator heading towards the Council of Chuck's secret ChuckNet ship, still holding Junior in his arms.
Junior!
He shouted.
Quick, Geraldine, potion!
Before he had chance to finish his very short sentence, Geraldine was already mid-throw of a swiftness potion he was trying to request. Like a flash, he burst off down the hall, away from Foxy in the cloning facility and towards his son. Geraldine splashed herself with another potion and followed, speeding down the corridor behind them both. As Big Chicken caught up, he dived at the Chuckinator, knocking him off his feet and losing his grip on Junior. Junior flew up into the air, and with his arms now free, he spun around and clapped his hands together, shrinking the Chuckinator down to the size of a small mouse. Big Chicken caught Junior in his arms as Geraldine caught up, and they all wrapped their arms around each other tightly.
Chuck City will self-destruct in T-2 minutes.
Foxy!
Shouted Big Chicken as he pulled back from the hug and looked across the wide open space of the cryogenics facility. Around the bottom layer of the facility where they were currently located was a walkway that skirted around the entire edge of the giant open-roofed building. All around the edge of the walkway was a simple barrier preventing anyone from falling down into the open pit of the cryogenics fluid processing systems below, the same systems that Monitor Chuck had met his demise in earlier. The processing systems pit was deep and very wide, meaning the side of the room that Foxy was standing on was a substantial distance from where Big Chicken and his family were standing, and there was no walkway directly between the two of them. Foxy had somehow gotten free from his restraints of the chair and headed out towards the original ChuckNet ship, which was at the other end of Chuck City. He hadn't managed to get far before he'd become completely surrounded by the Council of Chucks and a much smaller army of worker Chucks, guard Chucks, and elite Chucks than were there before. His back was up against the wall. He had to make a choice, run left and try and get all of the way across the city in time to steal a ship, or run right and try his luck with the time cannon which was next door. Before he had chance to decide, however, his decision was made for him as Chuck Prime and Chuckatron dropped down from the ledge above, completely blocking his route to the ship.
If we're going down, you're coming with us,
sneered Troublesome Chuck. Foxy broke to the right, leaping towards the door of the time cannon room, but before he could reach it, the one Chuck appeared before him and grabbed hold of him. The rest of the Chucks moved in, tightly closing a circle around him, There was literally nowhere he could go. He was completely trapped.
Chuck City will self-destruct in T-1 minute.
A minute is quite a long time,
thought Big Chicken to himself as he watched Foxy become surrounded at the other side of the facility. He still had a couple of minutes of swiftness left, and he was trying to work out if he could make it all the way round to the other side of the building where Foxy was and back again before it ran out. Geraldine put her hand on his shoulder as if to steady him.
You can't make it, big guy. Even if you could get to him, you'll never make it back again.
Big Chicken looked at them both, then back to Foxy.
I can't leave him. We've come so far,
he pleaded. Even with Junior's newfound magical powers, there was no amount of potions that would give them the time they needed to mount a successful rescue.
I'm sorry, Foxy,
Big Chicken shouted across the room. From across the facility on the other side of the platform, through the bodies of Chuck surrounding him, Foxy watched as Big Chicken turned around and led his family out of the back entrance and onto the Council of Chuck's ship. I understand, buddy, he thought to himself. You'll always be my hero.
Chuck City will self-destruct in T-30 seconds.
At this point, Foxy had resigned himself to the fact that he was going to die. He would need an absolute miracle to get out of this one, and he was pretty sure he'd used up more than his fair share of good luck.
Any last words?
Asked the one Chuck as he tightly gripped Foxy's arm.
Yeah?
Came a solitary Chuck voice from within the crowd. The Chucks turned round and gazed at the single, seemingly insignificant Chuck standing at the back of the horde.
It can't be,
the one Chuck said softly in shock.
Chuck City will self-destruct in T-20 seconds.
Chuck stepped forward, waved at Foxy, and then stood up straight and began to emit an incredibly high-pitched frequency that started to resonate with all of the other Chuck's circuitries. It was almost inaudible to Foxy, but the signal had a strange effect that made all of the other Chucks begin to vibrate, welding them to where they stood and forcing the one Chuck to loosen his grip on Foxy. Foxy felt his arm free. He only had seconds to head into the time cannon room and escape, but now Chuck, one of his oldest friends, would be left here on Chuck City to die with all of the others. "Chuck!" he shouted. Chuck looked back towards Foxy. His face flickered for a moment, and then Foxy heard Mr. Onion's voice as if talking through Chuck.
Go now. I can't hold them forever.
"Mr. Onion?" Foxy called back in confusion. At that moment, everything finally fell into place in Foxy's mind. Like the last piece of the jigsaw, Foxy understood where Mr. Onion had come from and where Chuck had been all of this time.
Goodbye, my friend,
Mr. Onion said softly as his face flickered back into Chuck's.
Chuck City will self-destruct in T-10 seconds.
Foxy hesitated, glanced at the time cannon and back to Chuck. He raised his arm, gave a gentle wave as he dived through the door and hastily looked for the activation button.
5, 4...
Foxy saw the button. He stood on the platform at the foot of the cannon and crossed everything he had in hopes that the time cannon would take him somewhere useful.
3, 2...
He closed his eyes and hit the button.
1...
The explosion of Chuck City sent the ChuckNet ship into a wild spin as Geraldine battled to keep it flying away from the space station. As they leveled out, Big Chicken caught a glimpse of a faint streak of light, tinted red and orange, fading away across the abyss of space.
I think he made it, Dad,
said Junior.
I think he did too, son,
replied Big Chicken.
Now let's go home.
Before Geraldine engaged the jump drive, she swung the ship around to face what was left of Chuck City. A few smouldering blocks were left spinning out into space. Otherwise, there was no sign that a city had ever existed there, and no sign of any remaining Chucks either. With a little bit of sadness in her heart, she engaged the jump drive and took them home.